Welcome to the show, folks. This is the strategy session, the only show out there where actual political strategists break down the stories behind the headlines and tell you what it all means for you, for Democrats, Republicans, and the country. I'm Democratic strategist and Lincoln Square host Max Burns, and I am truly excited tonight because I have an august panel of political experts here with me, and we are going to break down a crazy week in American politics, and it's only Tuesday. With me today, a longtime Democratic communications expert who's advised some of the best in the business, Joel Payne, is here. And it is my pleasure to have a guy I've filled in for many times on SiriusXM on the Dean Obeidallah show, the great Dean Obeidallah, joining us. Thank you so much for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I want to jump right into this with a video I think sums up the week perfectly for us. Let's play that clip from the reflecting pool today. Now, this is amazing. This is the reflecting pool Donald Trump just spent tens of millions of dollars renovating, filled with green slime. And we have workers dumping buckets of hydrogen peroxide in there. Now, I'm told, given the size of the reflecting pool, they'll need about 10,000 gallons of hydrogen peroxide. They're going to be there all night with those 1-gallon jugs. This about sums up Donald Trump's administration for me. What do you guys think?
I think it's been some week. He lost the Iran war and the war on algae. I mean, losing the war on algae, that's a rough one. And this was a no-bid contract, $14 million he gave, and he paid a fee for expedited because he wanted to get it ready for his big Trump rally on July 4th, which is no longer about America. It's literally, as he put in writing, a Trump rally on July 4th, the most spectacular ever. And they have an agreeing algae pool. And Trump will just declare victory. They're like, I wanted it green. That's what I wanted. People didn't understand. I was always going for green. Blue's overdone. Green's a thing. It's just everything he touches, it goes bad. There's no successes objectively in his entire second term, and the green algae perfectly sums it up.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, someone's going to get fired because they didn't do this in March around St. Patrick's Day. Then it would have actually flowed. It would have been like, you know, how they turned the river green in Chicago, but they can't lean on that as an excuse. Max, I think you said it. Everything that Trump touches seems to get worse. It gets worse for the American people. And this is the perfect encapsulation of what this experience has been over the last year and a half. Add on to the fact, just like Dean said, that the corruption and the grift is just off the charts. And none of us, our lives, our experiences, none of it's better. We're all worse for it. It seems like we're on the wrong end of another scam from Donald Trump.
And that really is a great summation, not just of this week, but of the whole presidency of Donald Trump. We've had a corruption extravaganza break in the news just today. I think the big story coming out about the White House ballroom, that not only is it $600 million and not 200 or 400, but that taxpayers are actually paying for this already, even though it was supposedly pulled out of legislation in Congress. And this to me just symbolizes Donald Trump's complete lack of connection to what's going on in the country. You have diesel fuel up 47% year over year. People can barely afford groceries. But this ballroom has become his main driving concern. I mean, Dean, what does that say to you about where he is mentally?
Do you mean Donald, I love the inflation Trump? You know, where he's going? He's awful. There's nothing redeeming. His approval rating should be 5%, just like the hardcore Klan members. This is to watch this play out, the ballroom, the algae, the failure in the Iran war, which absolutely Donald Trump lost the Iran war. The United States did not lose the Iran war. Donald Trump lost it. Donald Trump is not the president of the United States. He's the president of MAGA. This was a MAGA loss for America. And still, he gives himself the ballroom, right? And still, he is grifting off the White House and his buddies around him. Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire this week is the poster child for need for higher taxes on the wealthy, because the oligarchy is here, folks, and it's growing stronger every day, and they're going to buy and sell elections unlike anything we've seen. Worse than the Gilded Age, worse than before the Progressive Era, which tried to make things a little bit better. So this is the ballroom. All of this is perfect. Can you believe this is what we're living through? And it is what we're living through. It's awful.
Yeah. Joel, what does it say about Donald Trump and the issues facing Americans that he has not talked about rising prices or the challenges facing farmers or the challenges about medication rising in price. It's been ballroom, arch, reflecting pool all month.
Look, Max, I've heard other people say this. This is the Make-A-Wish presidency at this point. This is Donald Trump living out his biggest dreams and his biggest fantasies to name things after himself, to be an interior designer. I mean, the American people didn't vote for Bob Vila or Martha Stewart. They wanted somebody to make their gas and their eggs more affordable. They wanted somebody who could actually focus on the things that they care about, not the stuff that Trump cares about. The only thing that I can see that's positive out of this is that Trump has disproven his political theory, and he's disproven the fact that he has the focus to actually execute on putting together the type of coalition that his folks talked about governing for. They had no real interest in governing for these people the entire time. And I think the fact that they've been exposed and that's been put out on Front Street is a net benefit to all of us. And now the question, Max, is what are Republicans who are not Donald Trump going to do? Because if I was a Democrat, if I was a Chris Murphy or Chris Van Hollen or really any Democrat with a future in the party, I'd put this thing up for a vote as soon as I can on the Senate floor and say, do you want to do a rescissions package to take back any money, any taxpayer money that was put towards this vanity project for Donald Trump? Go on the record about it. The same way that they should keep making Republicans go on the record about that slush fund. Republicans are going to have to own this. There's no distance from this. Yes, this is Donald Trump's actions, but this is Republican permission structure allowing it to happen.
And it's interesting what we've seen there, because it seems as Donald Trump's popularity has plummeted, his relationship with Senate and House Republicans is also sort of going into a deep freeze. You've seen them pushing back on the slush fund. They do not like Todd Blanche as the AG nominee. They did not want to fund the ballroom and were very hesitant about bringing that up. But do you think that's real, or is that just performance? Like, how are Republicans still tied to Trump, even as they're sort of superficially saying, hey, maybe let's focus on anything but your vanity projects for a minute?
I can start, Dean, if you want. I mean, I think it's real. I think it's real in this way. It is real in that they are starting to see the writing on the wall. They see that they have to face voters, and this is a deeply unpopular administration and a deeply unpopular agenda. They also see that Donald Trump is not going to be here forever. Yeah, he just turned 80 this weekend, but his expiration date on this earth may only be preceded by his expiration date as a political entity, because after November of this year, Donald Trump is going to advance to lame duck status about as fast as anybody you can imagine in recent political history. He does not actually have the political power that he claims to have. And I think Republicans are just late to the party on that. Republicans are always going to be the last ones to leave the party. And actually, I don't think it's the true believers who are going to be the last ones to leave. I think the last ones to leave are going to be the folks who are, operating on a pay to play with Donald Trump, who are treating Trump as, oh, I can control him and I can get what I want out of him. It's going to be the Lindsey Grahams. It's going to be the John Thunes. It's going to be the Marco Rubios. It's going to be the ones who, purportedly should know better. Those are going to be the ones that are actually going to be the last to leave the island. The true believers, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens, they already see the guy as a crook. Now they knew his agenda and they knew the bad things he wanted to do for the country, but they also knew when he checked out on that agenda. And the folks who are late to the party are going to be the ones who are last to leave.
Yeah. Dean, what do you think?
I would say the one thing that I think is missing sometimes in the conversation is I want to see Democrats do more than make this a referendum on Donald Trump. That's built in. That's baked into the cake. I want Democrats to have an affirmative message, a message that's going to change people's lives for the better in a tangible way. When they hear it, it's real and it resonates. The same way Zohran Mamdani did in New York City, where we talk about childcare, that changes people's lives. Rent freeze changes people's lives. Free buses, it changes people's lives. The first two more so. There's been, I was tracking it the last couple of weeks. The generic congressional ballot question has been shrinking with the Democratic lead. It was up higher, and new polls say by the economists, it's 2 to 3 points. And I think it's because Trump is sucking up all the oxygen. It's baked in. The people don't like Trump. I think Democrats should use 2026 to lay the groundwork for 2028. I don't think they should just run out the clock and be like, hey, it's going to be great. He sucks. He does suck. And I still think what that poll doesn't measure is intensity. The intensity is on our side. The energy is on our side. So I still believe we win the House, and I think we have a great shot at winning the Senate. But I think for Democrats, Don't just run out the clock. Don't just be Trump is awful. We get that.
Yeah.
Talk about affirmative things. I'm tired of Democrats in a way. I mean, the corporate media sucks. They don't even put Democrats in the media. It's just all Trump all the time. It is nonstop Trump. We are pushed out of the landscape, which is why our Democrats have to go into independent media more to get their message out. But Democrats use this as an opportunity. People are hungry for policies that will change their life. Be bold. No more of this corporate BS. Be bold. Come out with ideas that are going to change people's lives for the better. And we have the ideas. They were in Build Back Better. Expand Medicare for dental, vision, and hearing. Paid family leave. That polls 70%. The idea of pre-K across the nation polls like it's 70%. Expanding Medicare, that's like 90%. 90% of America support it. Lean into it, Democrats. Change people's lives for the better. Be what we believe you should be as Democrats. Someone that's be a vehicle for change for the good for people, for working class and working poor.
Max, can I just add really quick?
Please.
Because I think you make such a great point here. Look, the Democratic project right now is about rebuilding trust. It's rebuilding trust with your base and with the public. And in order to do that, you have to demonstrate that you've got more to say than just a noun, a verb, and Donald Trump. You actually have to have an agenda that goes well beyond that. And I think Dean is right. And when you look at like these public opinion polls and these ratings that, show Democrats are just at or even below Trump, 20, 25, 30%. A lot of those numbers, what accounts for those numbers are traditional Democratic constituencies, right? They're union folks. They're people in the African-American community. They're younger voters. There are people who, for all intents and purposes, should be Democrats and are Democrats. These aren't jump ball voters in the middle who are making up the deficit for Democrats right now. And those folks are reticent to get behind a brand that doesn't feel strong and that doesn't feel clear. And so to Dean's point, Democrats have to show that they have something to deliver on for people and that people can trust in the Democratic brand that's being presented to them.
Yep.
That's a great point. I mean, to both of you, because we have this poll out this week, the Reuters Ipsos poll, and it goes to that point that Republicans being unpopular doesn't make Democrats more popular. We have Donald Trump at 48% disapproval among rural voters, the highest he's ever been. It's up 14 points since last year. But at the same time, even a majority of Democratic voters in that poll say they're not sure what Democrats actually advocate as policies, which I think is why you see people like James Tallarico, even Graham Plattner, who has his problems, who are doing well with voters because you can say, I know what this person is advocating. I know their policies on the economy, what they want to do with healthcare. And you just don't see that coming out of Washington right now. How can Democrats get around that and actually settle on this message that voters can understand and they can take with them to the ballot box?
I would say that Democrats, as a party, we don't have an identity crisis. We have a leadership crisis. The base I talk to every night on my show, we know what our values are. We know what we want from Democrats. But we have a disconnect with Democratic leaders who get annoyed when you ask questions. Sometimes, not all of them, don't get me wrong. Sometimes when they're challenged on things. And, I so much try to amplify the fighters in our party. And everyone watching can name the same 25 or maybe 30 Democrats who are fighters. The problem is there's 250 plus Democrats in the House and the Senate. Why don't there are 200 fighters? So you want fighters who are going to fight against Trump, but also by fighting against Trump, it shows you're going to fight for us. Like if you're going to take it on the nose and you're going to get the incoming, then you're going to fight against Big Pharma. You're going to fight against big insurance companies. You're going to fight for the working class Americans because it's not easy to fight against the Elon Musk and the oligarchs of this nation. We all get that. So the idea of fighters, I don't think fighters is just about fighting against Trump. It's fighting for something that matters. And I think right now, the leadership of our party is not articulating a vision that inspires people. Chuck Schumer, take an improv class. Do something. Take an acting class. Bring something to life. I watch him like, you're in New York. Go to UCB. It's the Upright Citizens Brigade, but they have improv classes. Do something. Learn how to convey. And Hakeem is just disappointing because he has the skill set. And sometimes he's good and sometimes he's not. I don't understand that at all. But Schumer's gone. We need someone new there.
The Democrats who are most effective around the country. Just let's just do an exercise real quick. Who are some of the most popular Democrats around the country? Rob Sand, the guy running for governor in Iowa. By the way, my classmate, I graduated with him. Brilliant guy. I think he's gonna be the next governor of Iowa. Ruben Gallego, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, John Ossoff. Go down the list. People whose first descriptor underneath their title is not Democrat. It's something else. These are folks who, yes, they are members of the Democratic Party, but when they speak, they carry credibility beyond the Democratic Party. That's why James Tallarico raises a bunch of money, but maybe Texas Democrat, the Democratic Party of Texas, per se, is not as strong. Tallarico is stronger than the party. These individual entities and these individual brands are stronger than the party. And it's because the party brand is so, it's devastated right now. And so really what we've got to do, to your point, Dean, is we need leadership. We need those folks to stand up. We need those folks to be put forward, and the brand will follow. The Democratic brand will follow the leadership of these dynamic young leaders who, again, their first descriptor, their first relationship with the public is not the Democratic Party. It is they happen to be a Democrat, but they fight for working people. They believe in the minimum wage. They believe in equal rights. They believe in fairness. They want to fight corruption. Those are their brands, not just being Democrats.
And is this happening, this sort of move away from the Democratic Party as an entity, because Democrats are just in an unpopular cycle? Or is there a larger sort of cultural move in both ideologies away from parties? Because it seems like with Trump especially, we have moved into just a complete candidate-centric kind of politics where people want a candidate they can relate to. They don't care if they're particularly loyal to the Democratic National Committee. Most voters couldn't tell you who's on the Democratic National Committee. Is that something that we can expect will continue, or is this just, in our strange times, we're so far away from normalcy?
I would say, Max, most people can't even tell you who the DNC chair is right now. And that's because Ken Martin's a quiet guy. And I talk to people like Keith Ellison, who's on all the time. My buddy from Minnesota told me before he got elected, Ken Martin, he's a behind-the-scenes quiet guy who gets things done. Okay, but it falls on the leaders running for president. On my show, listeners kept begging last year for Democrats to announce they're running for president way in advance, because they knew that it'll take the personality of a person to transcend our party brand and then redefine us. So the next Barack Obama, which we all pray for, the next person who inspires us, whoever that might be in this field, there's gonna be a lot of good candidates. I hope a lot of good candidates. And if we win in 2028, then all these problems are solved. Right? Look at this. We figured it out. We're great right now. But right now, the leaders of our party are the ones that brought us to a place where we've lost the House, the Senate, a majority of the governorships, and the White House. And they're still going the old playbook and take it, be safe about it. Don't touch the hot button issues. Don't talk about like the Palestinian issue. I'm like, look at the polling. Look where your own party is. You don't even, and they don't even care. It's not like, there goes my people, I have to go follow them. Nope. The elite leaders just sit back and do what they keep doing, and nothing changes because it's about raising money over and over. So, Max, I think at the end of the day, the leadership of 2028, whoever becomes our nominee, will be the person who will define our party going forward. It won't be statements at the DNC or platform papers. It'll be whoever we choose. And I'm hoping that we really choose someone inspiring that will talk about policy in a way that moves people. And I keep bringing up Zoran, not for the template, that you have to follow his policies, but he gave specific policy proposals that if you thought about it, you're like, that really is going to change my life for the better. That's what we need.
Max, it's World Cup season, so I'm going to deliver a little bit of an own goal on myself. I've worked in Democratic Party politics and national politics for about 20 years. I worked for Majority Leader Harry Reid, Debbie Stabenow, Frank Lautenberg. Right? I am a Washington creature by most people's accounting. The heat and the energy of this party does not exist within the four walls of Washington, D.C. and the corridors of Capitol Hill. It is all out in the states and in the cities and in the communities. It's the people in Minnesota who push back against ICE. It is the people in Maine who organize for Grant Plattner. It is the people all around the country who have just said, enough is enough. We in our community are going to organize, and we're going to be the change. The change is not coming from whether it's Chuck Schumer or Dick Durbin or Brian Schatz or whoever the next Senate Democratic leader is going to be. It's not going to be from Hakeem Jeffries. It is going to be from people all around the country who have the rank and file appeal of Democrats outside of Washington, D.C. And I think that's a lesson that I've taken from this era, is that the top-down thing it's gone. It doesn't work. I would say the flashpoint, the climax point of that was the Biden-Harris kind of debacle. I think Vice President Harris was dealt a tough hand, but the debacle that was the end of the Biden-Harris presidency, that's the flashpoint. I think that meant the end of an era where people in Washington, D.C., people who allegedly knew better and who had more information were making decisions for people who weren't in the room. That's over.
Yeah. So with that in mind, Joel, what are some of the races that are getting you excited this cycle?
Yeah, lots of them. I mean, we talked about the race up in Maine. I think, look, Graham Plattner is obviously a candidate who's got a lot to deal with. I think he's got a pretty good shot to be the next senator from Maine. I think in a +8 state for Democrats, I think, in 2024, Kamala Harris won that state by 8 points. I think Graham Plattner has a really good shot to do that. I think Talarico in Texas obviously has folks very excited. I think there's some interesting House races. You've got some really dynamic young House candidates like Chris Rabb in Pennsylvania, right? You've got, folks out west. You've got Sam Montag out in Virginia. What I like about this is that Democrats are demonstrating that there is more than one template of a Democrat, right?
Yep.
Democrats have a very broad appeal and a very broad brand when the party is doing its business the right way, which is finding people who make sense and connect in their communities. I think Abdul Al-Sayed in Michigan is an amazing candidate. And yeah, he is going to certainly have Republicans coming at him in a certain way, but he's also going to open up a vein of new support and open up trust with voters who have long since dismissed the Democratic Party. So I think the Democratic Party is in an era now where you're finding candidates who are opening up new voters to the brand and to the party, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And Rob Sand, too, that you mentioned earlier for governor, I think has coattails in the sense that there are now House races in Iowa that are competitive that were not before. There's a Senate race that is competitive and is forcing Republicans to spend some money. And that is a big deal. I mean, watching Republicans suddenly shift money to these races they thought were safe 6 months ago is a really gratifying thing for a Democrat who's used to seeing that happen the other way for us. Dean, who's on your radar?
I'm very focused on New York City because I live here and the primary is Tuesday. But I'm intrigued in the bigger picture about Dan Goldman, Brad Lander race. I think that's very interesting to me. You've got also, I live in New York's 12th congressional district at Gerald Nadler's seat where he's not running for re-election. And there's not like a true way left person in this district running. But I'm interested there. There's also a race with Clara Valdez and Antonio Reynoso, which is an open seat in Brooklyn, Queens area. So those are, to me, I'm really intrigued with that. In addition to what Joel was like, Abdul Al-Sayed, I've known for a long time. I had him on my show when he ran for governor the first time, a whole bunch of other times, and now running for Senate. He's someone that I find to be inspiring and really smart. I look at this younger pundit class of Hassan Piker and how he gets demonized and then he goes to the candidate and that candidate happens to win. And all of a sudden people are not talking about this stuff as much. Maybe he can help us win. Adam Hamway in New Jersey's 12th district is a friend of mine. He was on my show before, as a doctor who went to Gaza to share with my listeners what it was like there. Also, he runs for Congress as the Democratic nominee in a district which he should win there. So there's a lot, and I hate to make it New York, New Jersey centric, but living here, I see these people firsthand. And there's races across the country too that I'm looking forward to November. I wish November would get here already. I wish the election was tomorrow, to be honest.
And I'll just say this too. And by the way, Dean, you never have to apologize. I'm a Jersey kid, so
good.
Never apologize for too much New Jersey content. I would say this 2028 field, which is very much developing, it's simmering right beneath the surface. Look, I worked the 2008 presidential race. I worked for John Edwards, where that race you had a significant amount of Democrats who, whether they became president, ran for president, were the party's nominee, were top tier candidates. You will have that 4X, I think, in 2028.
Yeah.
You are going to have a tier one of candidates that's maybe like an AOC, a Gavin Newsom, a Pete Buttigieg, a Kamala Harris. And then you're going to have to, if you're John Ossoff, right? John Ossoff might be on your tier two, right now, entering the race, because those folks all enter the race with such a high floor. I mean, this will be a dynamic opportunity for Democrats to have the type of fights that are healthy. And actually, I kind of, that's the point I take from all of this is Democrats need to be comfortable with having healthy fights about the things that have been swept under the rug for a long time. You got to have hard conversations. You got to let the voters decide this stuff and figure it out. I know a lot of people were anxious about what happened in Maine. Maine voters figured it out. Let them figure it out. Let voters figure it out around the country.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because you have Graham Plattner in Maine, you have Al Sayed, who has had his own controversies. You have candidates who are not perfect, and the Democratic Party establishment's response seems to be to push them immediately to drop out and clear the path for no one in most cases. But you look at how Republicans have run candidates, and there's a strain of the Democratic Party that says, I wish we could run candidates who weren't perfect and who had good policies but didn't have to be choir boys. Have we finally got to that point where we're accepting candidates who are not perfect because they can win?
I think not because they can win. I think because they move people. I don't think that calculation is, I think Graham Plattner could win so I can support him. It's Graham Plattner had been inspiring people. Corporate media gives an assist to corporate Democrats. Every time a Democrat goes on TV, they go, make them answer to Graham Plattner. Meanwhile, Tommy Tuberville has spewed the most anti-Muslim garbage I've heard in the modern era in the last few months. He's the Republican nominee for governor of Alabama, and he's in the Senate, and they do not ask Republicans. What do you think about Tommy Tuberville saying Muslims are the enemy within, or that Muslims shouldn't be in this country? And you talk about Muslims killing people in America, which is not true at all. Like the ginning up of hate. If Graham Plattner was saying anti-Semitic stuff, was saying stuff, Nazi-like stuff, I can assure you he would not have won the Democratic nomination. So when the idea of, he has a tattoo from 18 years ago and didn't get rid of it, that doesn't define him today, because that's not what he's talking about. If he said things consistent with a tattoo that reflected a Nazi tattoo, I can assure you he would have lost horribly. So what moved people was they didn't care about that because that's not who he is today. They cared about his message on policy. It's going to change people's lives. It's revving up the base. Issues like the Middle East again, which I've been Palestinian all my life. It was never a good thing to thought being about Palestine. All of a sudden now, people like me. It's almost uncomfortable. I liked it better when no one liked me. It's like just a few people like me, a small club. So I think it doesn't matter your past. If the person is today is someone that inspires people on policy and on personal charisma as well.
I think voters have been crystal clear what they find disqualifying and what they don't find disqualifying. Graham Plattner is an example. Yeah, he's got some black marks on his record. He's got some things that I think people are welcome to judge that, and Maine voters are welcome to judge that. And you know what they did? And they assessed their options, and they said, despite the fact that I might not agree with everything this guy has done before he decided to sign up for public life, I believe in his message on the war in Iran. I believe on his message on economic populism. I believe on his message on giving power back to working people over the well-connected. So I think I have more confidence that he's going to represent my interest in Maine than Susan Collins. Voters figured that out. Let them figure it out. And if the line is if it's too much for voters, voters will tell you. Because honestly, I actually think, and look, Democrats are going to have to get over being kind of precious about who's in their coalition. And I think the strategy consultant class of the Democratic Party, which, guilty as charged, I'm probably a part of it, is going to have to get some religion and get comfortable with voters telling them about where their lines are and what is disqualifying and what's not disqualifying. But ultimately, voters will also tell you, hey, that doesn't work for me. And the thing that's going to bother them the most is if you're disingenuous and if they don't trust you, which is the bigger threat to any of these candidates who have these things in their past. If voters feel like they don't have a measure of you, if they feel like they don't have a sense of who you are, that is a bigger problem than any of the individual things that these folks all bring to the table in the form of an oppo dump. If voters feel like you've sold them a bill of goods and you're not genuinely and honestly who you said you were, they're pissed at you and they're gonna kick you off the island. But if you're straight up with them, give voters the opportunity to get to know you and take the measure of you.
Yeah, treat voters like adults is what we need to start doing. Instead of letting the DNC decide who voters should be able to vote for, let voters decide. Shocking.
That's right.
Amazing idea.
And voters have good standards. I think voters, by and large, particularly Democratic Party voters, I'll just make a point here. There's often a thing that's brought up about black voters, which I think is so fascinating. Like black voters can't deal with, some of the challenges of of kind of the hard decisions associated
Yeah.
with making political decisions. Black voters in particular, who are the real core, when a core constituency of the Democratic Party, are among the most savvy voters in America. Because black voters told you who could win in 2020. Black voters got behind Barack Obama when the time was right. Black voters put folks like Raphael Warnock in the Senate. Black voters have a pretty good record of showing up. And I think that Democratic Party constituencies across the board actually have a pretty good record of figuring out who represents them and their interests the best.
Yep, absolutely. And so as we head into what is already a jam-packed media week and political news week, I want to know what's on both of your radars as the strategists who are looking at the stories that are going to become big news in a week or two. Dean, let's start with you.
Well, algae is all I can think about right now. A lot of stuff focus on the algae. I think it's interesting, Max, you mentioned earlier, where Trump's only he only talk about like the ballroom, the arch, and like the reflecting pool, because that's all his brain can remember. Remember, it used to be like horse, dog, whatever the thing was. These are the things that stuck in his brain. So look, what's going to be in a week or two? That's really hard to figure out because news is going to move so quickly. What do I think?
Yeah.
After we get through these primaries, though, I think we're going to know a lot more about the Democratic base, what inspired them. I'm interested to see what demographics come out for the big elections coming out here, like Harry Dunn in Maryland, or I like Harry Dunn a lot. You know, he's got a competitive race there. Who wins these and who comes out and who's energizing our base, to me, is one of the big takeaways I'm looking at. The Iran war, the economic challenge that we have, that'll continue going forward. But right now, I'm really more laser focused on the primaries coming up in the next couple of weeks.
A thing I'm watching is, and I agree, by the way, I think Dean's assessment there, I agree with. So I'll focus on the foreign policy theater of it. I think that war in Iran, the fact that Trump is obviously kind of like rushed to the podium to say, I've got a deal, which is really just a memorandum that they will talk later about a deal, which we haven't quite seen a deal yet. And we don't know all the things he's going to give away. I thought the most interesting thing over the last 72 hours was Lindsey Graham, who is the biggest of all Trump sycophants, signaling that he was not all the way there and making this J.D. Vance's deal. That's fascinating to me, that inside the Republican Party, you're going to have this fight of who's responsible for this crap deal that is ultimately going to have to be arrived at. I think it is a good thing, and it will be a good thing when the hostilities have ceased, when the fighting stops. But the fact that Donald Trump irresponsibly drove us into this conflict, and we're exiting, no matter what form it takes, exiting this conflict worse, I think is a crisis for Republicans. And I think the fact that Lindsey Graham named this as a crisis for J.D. Vance, I think is so interesting. And I'd watch that beat very closely.
I love when bad people fight each other.
Yes.
We're going to follow all of those stories and everything else that's popping. But we are at the end of our show so far. This has been your strategy session here on Lincoln Square. You can follow us on YouTube at Lincoln Square Media or on Substack at Lincoln Square. I've been your host, Democratic strategist Max Burns. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheMaxBurns. And I want to give a special thanks to my amazing guests tonight, Democratic communications expert Joel Payne and Dean Obeidallah, the Dean Obeidallah Show on SiriusXM Progress. Guys, let our viewers know how they can follow you and learn more about the work you're doing.
Joel, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first, Dean. They can probably find you a lot easier. You're a big deal. Me, you can find me on Twitter at PAYNEDC, where I'm on there occasionally with some hot takes. Also find me on Instagram at Joel Payne Said. That's JoelPayneSaid.
For me, I'm very needy, so I hope you'll follow me on Substack. I have the Dean's Report there. I'm on Blue Sky as well, Dean Obeidallah. There's the Dean's Report right there. And it's about my article about my interview with David K. Johnson yesterday. But it's the main thing is Substack. And then I put some interviews from my show on my YouTube channel called The Dean Obeidallah Show on YouTube as well. So those are the main places.
Amazing. Follow these guys. You will be much better for it. And follow us at Lincoln Square Media on YouTube. Go on over there, click some more videos. Keep watching. Never stop watching. All right, that's it for us. Thanks for watching.